Okay, so I'm starting the episode. I was going to start a new thing where I open the episodes with two truths and a lie so that I can just or two lies and a truth, rather. Two lies and a truth so that I can submit the stream link to the Discord and so forth and people can filter in. So in Arc 3, of these things, there are two lies and one truth. Taylor starts dressing like a goth. Taylor puts a bug up someone's nostrils. And Taylor eats a bug. So, yeah, you tell me, where's the lie? Let's see here. Is anyone in the stream yet? Unclear. Let's see here. Oh, Sky is in the stream, so that's good. One person at least. Quinn! Oh, man. Okay. M and Vic. Cool. I guess all we need is, I think Greg's a guarantee, and then maybe K-Dog? I don't know. Maybe not. Well, I guess either way, I'll start. We have the start of Arc 2, Insinuation. It's gonna be kind of the regular progression of an arc where tension has been reset to 0, and now we're establishing the setting and stakes and the themes of the arc, and then we will move on to rising action, etc. And so Taylor wakes up to the sound of the radio in the bathroom, checks her clock and sees that it's 6:28, 2 minutes before her alarm would have gone off. She never needs it because her dad is in the shower like clockwork. She thinks routines defined us. Taylor seems to take comfort in this idea and the connection to her dad. She suddenly feels the effects of the previous night before remembering what happened. She's only been home for 3 hours and had even less time asleep. Taylor makes herself wake up. She goes to the kitchen and washes her face. She starts putting her shoes on when Danny shows up. Walking downstairs in his bathrobe, we get to hear the way Taylor thinks about her dad. As Vic and I alluded to last episode, she doesn't think of him at all in the terms he's worried about, but probably wouldn't be psyched to hear any of this either. Beanpole thin, weak chin, thinning dark hair that was on the cusp of baldness, big eyes, and glasses that magnified those eyes further. She goes on to sort of roast his demeanor as well. That's just the way my dad always looked, constantly bewildered. That and a little defeated. My word, Taylor can be savage sometimes. And this is one of the first times we see Taylor basing how she views someone's personality off of their appearance, or vice versa. Taylor stakes a lot on appearance. There's there's gonna be a lot of insinuating. There's no picture? Okay. Let me try and figure that out real quick. Yeah. That is my bad. Display. Alright, okay. So this is Danny going down the stairs. Danny roasted her in his chapter, so it's balanced. That's true. It's roasting going both directions. People don't think highly of Taylor either. Let's see here. We clearly get to see Danny. That Danny in her mind is not someone who's always on the verge of flying off the handle. Taylor's perspective on Danny is skewed, much as we saw in the last chapter when we saw Danny's skewed version of Taylor. This happens throughout the story as we see different perspectives. An example from characters we've already seen is the way that Emma and Sophia view Taylor. They think of her as meek because of the way she is in front of them, but never see beyond the surface level until, question marks. Taylor and Danny's lack of communication has led to a situation where neither one of knows anything about the inner life of the other. They greet each other. Danny thinks Taylor seems down and asks about it. Taylor shrugs this off, saying she's just tired. Let's see here. Yes, clearly they live in the concrete hovel. The conversation is slow, and we know time is passing because it's paced around the cooking and eating of breakfast. Bacon starts cooking, has time to be audible in the pan before he starts talking. He casually tries to get her to rest instead of running. We get a rare Taylor smile from the conflicted feelings she has that her dad is worried about her running. His past attempts to steer her toward options like joining a gym come to her mind. She wonders whether he would worry more or less if she told him about her powers, and I feel like she avoids thinking the obvious answer, that he would worry a lot more. Classic Taylor compartmentalization. She tells him she needs to keep running to keep the routine, and he tries to talk around the asking about the pepper spray. Taylor says she has the pepper spray without thinking about it, then remembers she actually doesn't. It's in the basement with her costume in the utility compartment. She feels guilty about the fact she lied to him. She thinks of it distinctly from the way she thinks of lying by omission or sneaking out. She sees the passive, accidental lie as worse than actively breaking her dad's rules, which she's more able to justify and rationalize. He asks her for the orange juice. She takes the opportunity to get some applesauce as an appetizer at the same time. Let's see here. Father does not know about the powers? No, her dad doesn't know. Yes, he does know that she had a meltdown and had to go to the psychiatric hospital. So that is public knowledge about Taylor. Danny puts some French toast on the pan and the room fills with the aroma of the cooking food. Enough time passes without comment that by the time Danny starts telling Taylor about a dock worker that had joined up as a henchman for two local villains, she's already eating the French toast that he had started cooking. We get Danny's exact job here. He's union spokesperson and head of hiring for the Dock Workers Association. As we've discussed in previous chapters, the work is dried up at the docks, so at this point a large part of Danny's job is just having to tell people that there isn't any work over and over. Yeah, imagine cooking bacon and French toast at 6 in the morning. Yeah, crazy. Just what a heavy meal. I am not ready for a meal that early. The two of them share a lighthearted moment of conversation while discussing the villain's uber and leet. We get a glimpse of how unserious the Capes seem to the public. They're very unsuccessful local villains with a video game theme. We'll see them later in the story. They're some of the least threatening villains in the whole series. Even in-universe, people think they suck. Taylor and Danny go back to several more minutes of silence before Danny finally brings up that he heard Taylor come back from leaving the house last night. She tries to play it cool and keeps eating to buy a moment. Then she tells him she couldn't sleep and walked around the neighborhood after walking around the house wasn't enough. This is the kind of lie Taylor can get behind. Technically, in a lot of ways, she's telling the truth. Let's see, this chat is going crazy over here. Work is dried up at the docks, says Quinn. The dad knows about that powers exist, though, right? Yeah, powers are like public knowledge, but they're not common at all. Let's see here. Danny is upset, but mostly keeps it together. Taylor says she has the pepper spray, which for her is a double-purpose statement, as it lets her think she's telling the truth rather than more lies. she had the pepper spray last night, I mean. Danny doesn't think this is a good excuse and asks what if she was surprised or they had a weapon. Taylor quips in her own mind about how someone might have pyrokinesis and the ability to grow armor plating and claws, then feels a little knot of ugliness in the pit of her stomach when faced with his concern. I wanted to pull that out because I think that's a great example of Wildbow portraying emotions well. Then her feeling intensifies as she thinks about the fact that she almost died last night. Let's see here. Danny attempts to get some answers from Taylor, but she gives the minimum amount of information she can justify. She doesn't even really try to evade. She just doesn't answer his second question. Feels a twinge of pain in her shoulder as she tries to shrug off his concern. It's like some kind of metaphor. She forced herself to keep eating even though she didn't feel like it because she knew she needed it after the strenuous night. After her shrug and lack of answer, Danny waits a bit longer, then goes back to eating as well, only to put down his fork and tell her that if she goes out in the middle of the night, he'll put bells on the doors. She thinks to herself that he in fact would do this and that she'll have to get better at sneaking. She had been so tired the previous night that she hadn't been conscious of it as she entered the house. Taylor says she's sorry, but feels guilty that she knows she'll do it again anyway. Danny smiles and tells her he's sorry too. She finishes her food and she's about to head out on her run when he gives her a hug, and then Danny asks if she's been smoking because her hair is burnt. She casually suggests she might have burned her hair on the stove. Danny says, "Be safe," as she leaves. After she gets past the gate, she breaks into an all-out run. And this is the shortest chapter in the book, so it's really bare bones, just like one awkward family conversation in the morning. So I don't have like a lot to say about it. It's a good reflection of the previous chapter, I think, but yeah. And then Vic says, "What does Danny ever do that indicates he would do something like that?" Do something like what? I missed. Maybe. What is the book called? The book is called Worm. Oh, bells on the door. Well, I think when he does put his foot down, then he decides on a course of action and then does it. Like I think that at this point she thinks he'll follow through on stuff he says he'll do. I don't know. I guess it is interesting, and he is a worrywart. Emma's right. Oh no. Moving on to chapter 2.2. Taylor feels awake after her run and a cup of coffee Danny left her, but she was disoriented by the return to normality after last night, almost dying, meeting a celebrity cop, and then just another Monday. The second paragraph lets us know time and place has changed. She's entering her homeroom class and worries that she might get called out of class or sent to the office because she missed her afternoon classes on Friday. Taylor thinks about how she kinda sorta wants to also skip this class, but forces herself to stay. The way she thinks about it frames her two reasons to be potential humiliation and drawing attention, which in her mind seem to be connected and a similar level of bad. The pity Taylor feels from Mrs. Knott's sad smile seems to hurt Taylor, just like all the other interactions. Celebrity cop. Yes, Vic. The celebrity cop, arms man. And then feeling anxious in this class wasn't a great way to start the day. It was, relatively speaking, the good part of most of her days. She was doing well enough in this class that most of the work was trivial, and none of the main trio were in this class, so she was unlikely to be harassed here. It's an hour-and-a-half long class period, so she can usually finish her work and do general cape research, as long as the search history isn't too wonky. Learning about capes is common enough that her behavior wouldn't be considered out of the norm for non-powered people in her situation. In this case, Taylor finishes a quick program that they had worked on Thursday and Friday, after which she's able to go on Parahumans Online, where she spends most of the rest of the class. I hated that too, Taylor. If supervillains were real and I had a child, I would be a worrywart too, to be fair. Literally same, and they live in an area where they're out and about, I guess. Yeah, they kind of do. They live in one of the like hotbeds for it in the whole country. Think the public reaction to COVID after only a couple years. That's true. That's true. It's like nobody cares. Yeah, and here it's been essentially 30 years. Taylor seems to think Mrs. Knott is a good teacher, but doesn't really say anything more like she does with Mr. Gladly. This section has been altered from the original form, which is still in the audiobook. Taylor's being problematic again and says some dicey stuff about Mrs. Knott. We'll talk about this in the character section, though. On her morning run, Taylor went over the details of last night in her mind, trying to remember everything. With her assignment nearly done already, she gets on the internet and goes to Parahumans Online, sometimes referred to as PHO. It's the Wikipedia and the main message board of Cape information used within the story's setting. Taylor opens a wiki tab and a Brockton Bay subboard tab. Starts searching for the events of last night, thinking that either Tattletale or Gru is the leader. She starts with Tattletale. The only thing she found was a placeholder article with only a blurry picture of her that asks for people to help expand the article. No information on her power whatsoever. What do we got here? So, we can't keep living in fear of furious, invulnerable dragon men. I feel like heroes and villains wouldn't get too old if the new ones keep popping up and whatnot. That is true. They come and go pretty fast, Guy. They are in and out. But they're seen as like celebrities, and it's weird. Yeah. Sky had said, are we supposed to like Taylor at the point in the audiobook when she was talking about Mrs. Knott? And yes, Vic is right. We're supposed to love Taylor. It's a long book. And then let's see here. Gru has an actual article about him, although it doesn't have a lot of details and seems vague. He's been active and known about for nearly 3 years. He used to do petty crimes like robbing stores and some mercenary work as extra muscle. But since he joined the new team, they're pulling large-scale jobs. It says corporate theft, and I'm not fully sure what that means. But like in this case, I kind of thought it meant like stealing documents, because that kind of lines up with his power. They also robbed a casino. His power is said on the wiki to be darkness generation. Even in a clear picture, he just looked like a blurry silhouette because of his power. Let's see here. Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. The new picture. Victoria is quite right. This is a good place to change over anyway. Yes. So, that is Parahumans Online, the Tattletale page. Pretty cool. Let's see here. Next she finds Bitch, but she has to do it by searching Hellhound. The article on Bitch is long. Her civilian identity is publicly known, as she never made an attempt to hide it after getting powers. It would also have been hard to do anyway, because when her powers manifested, her first dog destroyed her foster home, injuring her foster mother and 2 other foster children. She had been homeless most of the time since then. Around a year ago, sightings of her living on the street stopped. Taylor is able to see this lines up with when the Undersiders would have formed. When she was homeless, she would stay in an area and move on to the next when she was bothered by capes or cops. When this was happening, she was moving around and across Maine. Let's see here. Yeah, Vic, you did do a good job of recreating a 2011 browser. That it was good. Um, it says that various heroes and even teams of heroes tried to catch her, meaning that she was able to win or get away over and over again for years. Here we get a reminder that her power is to turn dogs into those big monster versions of themselves that we had seen last arc. These things are strong, fast, the size of a car. You can ride them like a horse, but it's like big and tough enough to hold more than one rider. The picture in this article shows her riding on one of her dogs down the middle lane of a street. In the picture, she's not wearing a mask. Taylor thinks she doesn't look very pretty and thinks she has a squarish, blunt featured face with thick eyebrows, which is kind of classic judgy Taylor. Um, Her page has a specific warning that even though her identity is publicly known, she's not to be approached or provoked, as she's known to have highly antisocial and violent behavior. They want people to leave the area and call the authorities if she's spotted. The bottom of the page has links to sources, articles, and even 2 fan sites. Victoria says, I think Bitch's power is really unique. I can't really think of anything similar. I agree. I have, not really seen anything like this. And I've gotten so used to thinking of it as just like, oh yeah, that's just a power because like I think about this when I think about superheroes. But yeah, the doggies do turn back. They sort of reform their original body in like a embryo sac in the middle of the big dog when they become the big dog, and then they kind of come out. Um, uh, I think it's maybe because she had hashtag issues before, Vic asks. Um, hmm. Well, I'm not quite sure of the context of the question. Sorry. But let's see here. Um, Oh, the bit about her being antisocial. Oh, well, I think it's because a lot of times when people had approached her, she had just attacked them and stuff. So, yeah. Finally, when she searches for the last Undersider, Regent, he doesn't even have an article. She searches for other spellings and words just in case she might have misheard, but keeps getting the automated messages. It matches with what Armsmaster had said about him, and Tattletale both being low profile. But even expecting to find, like, a very small amount, Taylor was surprised there wasn't even a placeholder. The dead ends only made her bad mood worse, so she takes a few moments to finish the class assignment, doing the bare minimum and moving it to the completed work folder. She checked the thing for bugs? Oh my god. Um, Uh, we all like Regent. Vic likes Regent, but I think in the problematic fave sense, I like Regent, and um, many people will not like Regent. um, Next, she looked up Lung, which she had done many times in her research since he's a well known and established villain in the local media. She knew all the well publicized villains in the area from her preparations to be a cape. Searching for him takes her to a catch-all page for his gang, the ABB. They're well known, so this article has a lot of information. She says the information on powers line up with her experience, except it's missing a few key details, namely the enhanced hearing and him being fireproof. She decides not to add the info for security reasons of it being tracked to her school or even her computer. She also decides that it will probably be deleted as baseless speculation anyway. Um, let's see here. Greg. Yeah, I like most of his family in the problematic way. And then M says, I like him because I don't know anything about him. Vic says, well, then I think you'll keep liking him for a while. um, Taylor scrolls lower on the page and sees information on Lung's subordinates, with more details on the two powered gang members. The article thinks there are about 40 to 50 unpowered gang members, mostly drawn from the ranks of other gangs in the area that Lung has conquered and absorbed. We'll learn at some point later on that that's the way he got Oni Lee to join him as well. It's mentioned again here that usually gangs that are racial in nature don't have people from multiple countries of origin, just like in real life, but Lung has gone out of his way to recruit anyone of Asian descent from the gangs he conquers, which probably ties back into his background of not being accepted when he lived in either Japan or China because he wasn't fully Japanese or Chinese. So it goes into his whole identity pathology that kind of like drives his changer form. But he doesn't stop there either. If you're in Brockton Bay and you're Asian, even if you're not in his gang, he still expects you to pay tribute to the ABB in some way. There were news articles and signs in the schools that provided guidance and resources to the people that the ABB targets. Yeah, it's weird, Greg. I agree. Long isn't a nationalist. He's a continentist. It's an odd thing. Um uh there's information here on Oni Lee and Bakuda as well. Oni Lee's power is described more here. He can teleport, but when he does, he doesn't disappear. The version of him in the spot he left can continue to move, act, and even attack in the 5 to 10 seconds before they turn into carbon ash. This allowed him to quickly teleport over and over again, leaving people attacking you from all sides. And it's unclear at any given moment if you're looking at the real him or not, because he can have already moved on. His portion of the article has one of those warning panels like Bitch had. He doesn't have a known civilian identity, but like she does, but Oni Lee has been determined from his past actions to be highly dangerous. Let's see here. He just wants everyone to be included, says Vic. Where's Lung from? So Lung was born in Japan and grew up there, and then as like a late teen, early 20s, he moved with his mom to China, and he faced problems of racism in both countries, and was imprisoned in China also. Let's see here. And Oni Lee dresses in a black bodysuit, described as making him look like a ninja, but not like Naruto, not like a orange jumpsuit. And he has a red Oni mask with 2 green stripes down each side. Oni Lee uses a host of weapons, including, but probably not limited to, knives, guns, and even grenades. He prefers the knives when we see him fight later, but he's got that killer instinct, has been known to hold grenades while teleporting and have his left-behind copies act as suicide bombers. He also wore a bandolier and belt to carry all his gear and weapons. And then Bakuda was listed as a new entry, having only been put there 10 days ago. The picture of her shows a girl with straight black hair, large opaque goggles over her eyes, and a metal mask with gas mask filters covering the lower half of her face. A braiding of black, yellow, and green wires loop over one of her shoulders. The wiki talks about the terrorism campaign against Cornell that Armsmaster had mentioned to Taylor. The site even has a video titled Bomb Threat at Cornell that Taylor wisely decides not to watch at school on a computer with no headphones. She sees a defeats and captures section for the ABB overall. Lung has several minor defeats, but all at the hands of whole teams. It mentions the Guild, New Wave, the Wards, and even the Protectorate. However, last night was the first time he had actually been captured by the authorities. A new blurb was saying that that Armsmaster was able to take him in after he was weakened from a recent encounter from another gang. Lung was being held at the PHQ awaiting trial by teleconference. The biggest indignity of all. A trial by teleconference. Lung has an extensive and well-documented criminal history, so the article says that he would most likely be put in the birdcage if he was found guilty. Taylor has mixed feelings about this. She thinks that she should be mad at Armsmaster, but isn't. Excitement builds in her until she wants to shake the guy next to her and tell him that she made that possible. Feeling good now, she moves to the message boards to see what people were saying. There was a threat against Armsmaster, requests for information about the fight, and someone asking if it was possible for Bakuda to get Lung released by ransoming him back with a large-scale bomb that might kill thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people. Taylor compartmentalizes this away and determines that this will be dealt with by more experienced heroes. The birdcage is indeed a supervillain prison. It's like a put you in and never let you out type of deal with, a bunch of security measures. Let's see here. Yes, this is the first mention we hear of it. Let's see here. After that, she realizes she hasn't tried to see if there was any information on her on the wiki or boards. She goes onto the advanced search and uses all sorts of bug-based search terms and narrows the time window to the last 12 hours. She finds 2 posts. One is about a villain in the UK named Pestilence. Some capes think their source of powers is magic. This is one of those capes. And the other post was in the connections section, where you go to try to leave cryptic information that will get to the right person, usually referring to specific things only the intended audience will understand. The message title was Bug, and it wasn't too long. Owe you one. Would like to repay the favor. Meet? Then, send a message. TT. There were 2 pages of comments, some people thinking this was important and others decrying them as conspiracy theorists with the PHO insult tinfoil hat. But Taylor knows that this message was meant for her, and it's very important. Victoria, I would be looking at this shit so much. Yeah. Sky said it is just chapter 2. Well, it's the first and second chapter of the second arc. So I guess the first arc is very short, but this is like the 8th and 9th chapter actually. Let's see here. So the themes, of course, bullying. There's the big gulf between Taylor and Danny that they can't really bridge because Taylor doesn't want to approach the bullying and Danny is also too afraid to bring it up. And that is blocking them from ever being able to work through their family trauma of losing Annette. So, boom. Yes, it is the superhero Craigslist misconnections. That's what the bug message was on. And then let's see here. Can we talk about the casualness that Villainy has talked about? Yeah. They talk about Uber and Leet, and they just don't even seem to care that like a person they know joined their like criminal gang. It's just not even a big deal. And they just think of them as like kind of a joke. They just think it's silly and goofy that someone they know is working for a villain. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's pretty silly. And then let's see here. Well, I wanted to briefly talk about the compartmentalization. It's like constantly happening on little things, and it just becomes like background noise because Taylor compartmentalizes so much stuff all the time. Um, Vic says, I think it's a good indicator to the tone how capes are viewed when they're not people like Lung. Um, M says, it is kind of silly and a lot goofy. A lot goofy. Um, but but yeah, the way that they think about the capes is so different from the way that the the fight with Lung went. So it sort of resets the tone and lets you know that it was out of the ordinary for something to happen, like Lung just trying to immediately kill people, rather than what's more normal of like, I don't know, it kind of being low stakes crime in certain ways. And then we'll see different like escalations of violence over time. But anyways, and I think a lot of the worst stuff is kept from the public. For the glossary, I don't have a lot. Just oh, actually, I guess I added some teams under this. M or Sky, if you want anything defined that was said, like words, then throw them out now while I'm reading these other ones. Same goes for you, Quinn. Any other new readers who haven't talked? Um, so Parahumans Online, or PHO, this is the main hub of information and news on capes. This site has two major pieces to it, the wiki and the message boards. I'll talk a little bit more about this in the Powers, Knowledge, and World Building in a bit. Tinfoil hat, PHO slang for a conspiracy theorist. The Guild was briefly mentioned as a team that had fought Lung. It's a Canada-based team that focuses on international threats. They usually go to places that have no one, or that no one has jurisdiction over, and deal with issues like stopping human trafficking, stopping parahuman warlords who have taken over areas, and sometimes stopping genocides. The Guild is one of the more like generally good teams. There's not really like a dark, sinister underbelly to the Guild like there is to almost every other team. um, let's see here. The Guild was originally made as a Canadian answer to the Protectorate. A treaty was later signed that included Canada and the Protectorate program and folded the Guild into being a sub-team, with most of its members also being part of different Protectorate teams part-time. Let's see here. New Wave. New Wave is a Brockton Bay hero team who have public civilian identities and don't wear masks. This team is a rebrand of the Brockton Bay Brigade when they decided to take their identities public as part of a push to promote accountability and transparency for hero teams. And we've got the characters section, which is going to be pretty long for this one. Danny. This time we get to see Danny from Taylor's perspective. The divide between the way she sees him and the way he sees himself is pretty stark. He does confront Taylor like he planned to in his chapter, but he doesn't make much progress because he's concerned about pushing too far. Uber and Leet. So far all we know is they're low-level villains who gave themselves a video game theme and barely stay out of jail. They're apparently doing well enough to hire hench people at the moment, though. I'll take this moment to talk about them saying these guys are B-listers. I think this is something that could have been done better in the setting. There's just not enough variation. S-class threats, there's only a few total in the world. A-class, they still consider like a huge threat and mobilize tons of people against. And then B-class is just like everything else. Vic just says, Danny! So I just don't think it divides the capes up very well because it's like huge portions of B-listers, I guess, and then and then barely anything else. So it's not a very useful nomenclature. Like right now, the Undersiders, like I think like everyone in Brockton Bay is considered B-list, which doesn't make any sense. But um, Miss Knott. In the original text, Taylor uses some transphobic descriptors of Mrs. Knott, including something people now consider a slur. I don't find the cut text to be like that bad personally, but I'm glad they took it out because I know other trans people would find it more upsetting than I do. I also think having the protagonist think this at the beginning of the book might send the wrong message about how the author thinks. This is the first major change I noticed when reading the text versus the audiobook. So, the book was written 11 years ago, the audiobook was done, or the book was done 10 years ago, the audiobook was done 7 years ago, and then this was changed sometime in the last 7 years, I guess. And Vic says, yeah, it could deter a lot of people. Yeah, I know. And it doesn't really add anything. Yeah, I agree. Um, I'm sure there are other parts that will be like, ooh. But Taylor is judgy as fuck, like Victoria says. Mrs. Knott only appears in a few chapters total. Um, and it does give us a look at a teacher that Taylor mostly likes. Her hands-off approach to the advanced stream of the class suits Taylor well, and it's the kind of teacher that Taylor's actually looking for right now. I mean, it's a book about people learning and growing, and the author learned and grew. It's like life imitates art. How old is Taylor? Taylor is 15 years old. And then Vic says, I do think Taylor's tendency to create an idea of someone around their appearance is a good thing to mention, though. Yeah. You can see it with almost every character so far. I don't think there's any exceptions so far. We've talked about, like, when introduced, we talked about Lung, each of the Undersiders, Armsmaster. We talked about Danny. We talked about the trio of bullies, Mr. Gladly and Mrs. Knott. Just like everyone, her opinion of them is like largely tied to the way that she describes their appearance. Because I feel like she could describe the same person similarly in like a positive and negative light, and it would be entirely based on how she views their role versus her role in like social situations. But moving a little further down, Tattletale, we don't learn that much. The article on Tattletale has basically nothing, but we learn that Tattletale's resourceful enough to find a way to contact Bug. And then we got Gru. Now we know that his power is Darkness Generation, or at least that's what it says online. Gru has been active for 3 years. Some capes have been around for over a decade, but most of them burn out long before that. I would consider Gru to have a medium amount of experience as a cape, on the sliding scale of it all. Usually capes who have been at it for a while have good instincts. Gru and Bitch both fall into this category, and have been capes for about the same length of time. They both have a pretty good sense for fighting. They'll do little things to protect themselves or leave a way out of situations without needing to think about it too much. Oh yeah, Victoria wants to know what M thinks about Tattletale's power, what it is. Also Quinn. Quinn, you don't know what it is, so from the one time you saw Tattletale in 1.5, what do you think Tattletale's power is? And I will quickly read this blurb. Oh, M says, can read minds, question marks? Knows when people are lying? Yeah, good guesses. To give you a reminder, the things that she knew are what poisons and venoms that Taylor had used on Lung, and she could also tell when Armsmaster was coming onto the scene. Oh man, I just said Armsmaster was coming. Vic's gonna have a nightmare. Um, let's see. Quinn says, I think it's some sort of mind reading thing. Okay, okay. And Sigma says, clipped. M says, is she Dolores? Um, I'm not sure who that is. So Dolores can hear everything. Oh, from Encanto. Okay, okay. Sorry. No, she's not. She's not. She doesn't have hear all. But that would make sense with her name. Okay, so let's see here. There's a lot about bitch in these chapters. We learn here that her name is Rachel Lint. She's got dark hair that will be described as auburn in later chapters. She grew up in the foster system and triggered at 14 while living living in a foster home. When her powers manifested, the first dog she used her power on demolished her foster home with the foster mom and 2 other foster children in the house. She had to move on over and over again, no stability in her life for years before she joined the Undersiders. That includes the time before she got her powers. All this has led to her not understanding a lot of normal social interactions. In a spiraling fashion, her confrontations lead her to become further isolated and less able to develop the social skills she would need to break her violent tendencies. We don't talk about Dinah. Oh my god, Greg. Then we've got Regent. We don't learn direct information about Regent, but we do learn that he's been able to stay nearly completely off the grid. He's been on an active team for a year with no PHO article. That's very impressive. Lung. Lung is now being held at the PHQ awaiting trial. We get some other info, but the important bit is he didn't manage to get away last night and is still in custody. It's also confirmed that Taylor's presence at the scene wasn't known by like news articles, and it's just Armsmaster who gets credit for the arrest. Sky says, so what did she do to the dog? So Sky, the power that, the power that Rachel has transforms the dog into, like a big monster version of itself that's like made of calcified muscle and bone. Her powers are explained in detail throughout the book, but they're, I mean, it's pretty detailed how it works in a lot of ways. So like as readers, we understand how it works throughout reading the course of the whole thing, you know. And yeah, she takes normal dogs and she can like pump them up with energy and they become these big like bone spike monsters. And then she like rides them around and they're not like under her control, but these like 3 specific dogs like are trained by her and know her like whistle commands and stuff. So yeah. Um. Anyway. Um. Let's see here. Are these monsters naturally aggressive, or do they do as she says? They mostly do as she says. Usually when a dog gets like turned into a big monster the first time, they like freak the fuck out. What Vic says they're not monsters. What do we call the big dogs when they become big shugs? Feel free to insert other names. They're just doggos. When they become big doggos, then the first time they usually freak out and so they run around with their new giant body that's, let's say, like, I'm just trying to think of like the size differential between how big they start and how big they get. Like, I don't know, like 10. I want to say like 10 times the size. No, that sounds silly. It's not like 10 times the height, but I mean like, square cube law. They're a lot cube bigger. They're car, van, SUV sized. Um, and they're big and powerful. And let's see, does she consistently use the same dogs? Yes, she uses the same 3 dogs all the time because these are the dogs that she has trained. So she can't, like, just go around turning a dog into a big doggo because then they'll rampage around or whatever, with their first time big dog body. Um, as Greg says, and they're still good boys. Uh, yes. We'll see a fair bit of the doggos. So as you think of things to ask about them, feel free. Um, Next little bit here, Oni Lee. We get a bit more about him from the book, but it's pretty much stuff I talked about in previous episodes. We learn more details about his teleportation power, letting him continue to act in his original location for a few seconds before turning into carbon ash. I think this is a really interesting power. When I first read it, I thought, like, it's such a cool twist on teleportation. Like, I've never seen anything like it. So I think it's really, really neat. Bakuda. We didn't learn much more, but we see a picture of her, and even in this picture, she sort of has Tinker gear on. And then we saw that everything Armsmaster had said about her terrorism campaign is pretty much publicly known and in the news, but it was in, like, New York news. Bakuda is super hot. Is that what we learned, Vic? I think they barely describe her. But I love her, says Vic. Mixed feelings. I have mixed feelings. Uh, she does some bad things to some people. She clearly has an explosive personality. Greg is right. Yep. Um, I was worried I was about to get Bakuda did nothing wrong unprompted in the chat from Vic. Uh, um, but here we go. We are on powers, knowledge, and world building. Parahumans Online makes perfect sense within the setting. Even if you take the whole superpowers are awesome thing out of the picture, a combo wiki and message board about a pressing subject that's actively changing the world is obvious. And in subtle ways, it's pretty natural. It's pretty much like sites we have in real life. It's still the internet, so take everything you read on here with a heap of salt. They do seem to have some info standards for the wiki, with Taylor expecting that if she wrote new info and didn't cite how she got it, then it would be deleted as unsupported speculation. The boards are also moderated in some ways and have a badge system that's so that verifiable factors about a user can lend credibility to what's being said. Sky says about the bombs, bang bang. M says, is Bakugo and Bakuda the same concept? I highly doubt it. Even if Bakugo means explosions or something. I mean, maybe they come from the same root words. They probably do. They're only one syllable different. My Hero Academia. Barf. Mega barf. Anyway. For the audience participation, Bakugo is hot also, so I mean, well, thanks, Gwen. Thanks for that interjection. Oh, and we got a spelling on Bakugo. Competing spellings. Um. Uh. So for the audience participation question, last week it was, how do you feel like the online culture interacts with the Cape World? Ugh. And I have an answer here from Greg, so anyone who wants to type out an answer while I'm reading this, feel free to, but Greg says, wikis and message boards and fan sites, oh my! From what I gather, online culture mostly interacts with the Cape world as fan culture, obsessing over what capes are doing, what they're wearing, how cool and dangerous they are, reveling in the drama of it all. Hearing about it online puts some distance between the violent reality and the fans, leading to a lot of worship, even of villains. Taylor mentions that Bitch has not one but 2 fan sites, and Rachel's a nobody. That's from the normie side of things, though. Capes sound like they're locked in a battle of information online. You want to minimize people knowing your strengths and weaknesses and maximize knowledge about your enemies. But if you get too involved, you put yourself at risk of being tracked or having your identity compromised. There have to be capes with crazy computer powers, so interacting with the system feels dangerous. Taylor worries about being tracked for adding information to Lung's article, so capes going forward will remain uninformed. On the other hand, whoever edited Oni Lee's article has no such fear. My bet's on Tattletale. So that was from Greg. And I think that was a very good answer. I agree with essentially all of it. So, yeah, no notes. Good stuff. Looking at the chat. Greg says, Bakuda makes bombs. Bakuga has bomb sweat. Honestly, Bakuda is way more dangerous. Sky says, okay, I didn't like mwah at first, but I got stuck with it. And it really does just grow on you. No opinions on hotness. I think it's totally gotta be like the true crime community. Quinn says, and yeah, Vic is right. The fan sites have got to be like the true crime community for sure. Quinn says, I feel like the online world for heroes is like how otakus are about their favorite anime. Yeah, agreed. I bet like the fans of a lot of the public heroes, like especially people like New Wave who have like fully public identities, they've got to be like crazy fans. And then let's see here. M says, I bet there's blogs on Tumblr with flower crown edits of the villains. Definitely, for sure. Vic says, but people love the celeb cops too. Who's your undersider's bias? And then M says Villain Kenny, but I'm gonna make that Villain Ken. Even people who aren't cape geeks still love capes though. It's true. There are like individual celebrities like Legend. Everybody knows Legend, and in universe, Legend is one of the reasons that gay people were accepted earlier, because he was such a long-standing hero who just like was perpetually a famous person essentially. Um, and there's also like Alexandria and Eidolons, people who have been around like, for someone like Taylor, her whole life. Trying to think of a community like that. Well, it's kind of like some rock stars who like really, really break through to normal people. And like regular celebrities, like M said. But the reason I thought like rock stars is because there's like multiple levels where there's musicians who like make really good music, but from there are the well-known people who are important for a long time or who like famously die or whatever, the like real celebrity musicians who kind of distinguish themselves. And then let's see here. Like some celebrities are household names. Yeah. But not everyone who likes them are crazy about them. That's true. All Might, yeah, he's like a household name in that universe. Who is the David Grohl of capes? Greg, only you know. Only you can know who the David Grohl of capes is. All Might is literally Eidolon. Yeah, sure, yeah. I haven't seen a lot of My Hero Academia, but in the small amount I've seen, they do have a lot of kind of personality overlap. Yeah. Is there a Kanye West of capes? Oh, there's a lot of Kanye Wests. You gotta remember, like, narcissist is like very, very common personality trait for capes. So, like, you got Kanye West, Kanye East, Kanye North. Um, and I mean, just like all sorts of big personalities clashing off each other and like causing problems. Uh, so, yeah, let's see here. Um, and then someone says, I would think that Alexandria is closer to All Might. Alexandria's power may directly be closer to All Might, but I kind of meant in the like way that All Might is covering up his waning powers. He was like absolutely supreme. Um, Bye, Vic. We're almost done, Em. Don't worry. This is like the last little pit. But then let's see here. I'd be super surprised if Taylor doesn't become a Kanye West cape. Yeah. Some would be yeah. We'll see how it goes, Sky. Um, but yeah, Eidolon's whole power set doesn't match All Might at all, but I'm not sure that's the important bit. Um, let's see here. I'm going to move on to just giving this week's audience participation. I'll also put it in the Discord. Uber and Leet are video game themed supervillains. Choose a video game and describe what you think a heist themed after that game would be like. You can use you can use like private messages or the Discord channel to send me longer answers if you're interested in sending something longer. Quinn says, I miss the old Taylor, straight from the go Taylor. You mean how she did no, like, just decided to go when her preparation was all ruined? Don't worry, she'll decide to go when her preparation is all ruined tons of times. Alright, so you can use Patreon to support Wildbow, the author of Worm, at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text is available at parahumans.wordpress.com, and the full fan-made audiobook can be found at audioworm.rain-online.org. And I know that's a bit much, but all those links will be in the description of the stream and in the Discord. Thanks for listening, and thanks for participating, everybody. And the stream will be the same time next week, 1 p.m. Mountain, noon Pacific, on Saturday the 26th. Thank you. See here.